Welcome to the Rhode Island Division of Developmental Disabilities DD Community Quarterly Forum. Tuesday, September 19, 2023. Hosted by Advocates in Action Rhode Island. On this screen, we've shared the agenda for today's meeting. Visit our website to download a copy, watch the forum recording, and find out more about the topics discussed at www.advocatesinaction.org.
Okay, we're on Facebook, so everybody wave to Facebook.
Hi, Facebook. Hello, my name is Kelly Donovan. I work with Advocates in Action Rhode Island as a peer resource specialist, and I receive services from the state as an individual with disabilities. So for today's quarterly DD forum, I would like to go over a few housekeeping tips. Okay. Everyone is being switched over from a participant to a panelist, which means that we'll be able to see and hear everyone. There should be something that pops up on the screen that asks if it's okay to be switched over. Click on it to say yes, it's okay. Also, be sure to stay muted. We will be making sure everyone's microphone is off. Only turn your microphone on if you're called upon to ask a question or make a comment. This will help cut down on some confusion and it will help to make a better recording of the forum. Plus, then no one's talking over each other. There will be time for everyone to ask questions after the speakers are done talking. You may also type your question in the chat box and we'll make sure that it gets answered. And so, first of all, I would like to bring attention to Kevin Savage, the Director of the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Take it away, Kevin.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And for those housekeeping tips, that will help the meeting go much better. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for attending the meeting today. It's amazing that the entire summer has gone by already and that we're already approaching fall. I hope everyone's had a wonderful summer and looking forward to cooler weather. I know I am. We appreciate you attending today and participating in this quarterly forum, and we look forward to sharing information with you, but most of all, as always, hearing from you and listening to what you have to tell us. I do want to make a minor amendment to the schedule for today. We will not be discussing conflict-free case management today, largely because there's going to be a forum on community management, on conflict-free case management, hosted by EOHHS on 9/28. So we're going to reserve any major discussion on conflict-free case management for that date. But one thing I will share with you is that we will be ensuring that there are special guidelines for DD versus the EAD providers, and we'll talk more about that on the 28th. But I don't want to get bogged down on telling you that we don't have answers today that will come up on the 28th. So we'll save the conflict-free case management agenda until the 28th, but we'll move forward with the rest of the agenda for today, and then we'll reserve the rest of the conflict-free case management until then. The first thing I want to do today is just introduce to you some of the new members of the Developmental Disability State team. So first of all, I wanted to introduce to you Natalie Munitz, who is the Chief Implementation Aide. She is off to a great start, and she has replaced the position that was vacated by Cindy Fusco. She's a wonderful person. She's already attended a lot of meetings. She's doing a great job. She's learning very, very quickly, and has the dubious task of having to read my mind to figure out what I'm thinking. And she's actually very good at that. So if you'd like to say hello to everybody, Natalie.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Glad to be a part of this team. And thank you for the introduction, Kevin.
Thank you. And then we have a number of new social caseworkers, so I'll introduce them. Gina DiBartola, Amber Matson.
Hi, how are you?
Crystal Morell, Katrina Ferry, I'm sorry, Katrina Ferry. She helped me remember her name because she's named after or has the same name as the hurricane, so that was helpful. Heidi Enriquez.
Hi, everyone.
And Robin Gannon, who is a new clinical training specialist.
Hello.
So we're very, very excited to have them aboard. We have filled all of the major positions. I think there's one transfer social caseworker that we need to fill, but we are as complete a team as I think we have been in probably 2 years. So we're very, very excited to have this expanded team in nearly all of our social caseworker positions filled. So anyway, welcome aboard, everybody, and we're certainly glad you're a part of the team. Next, I wanted to turn over the discussion to Anne LeClaire, who is just going to give us an update on what we've been doing on the implementation of the rate methodology process that we've been involved in for the last couple of years. So Anne?
Thank you, Kevin. The rate implementation is well underway now. Finally, we were a little bit late with it, but most of the existing services are all set. We're still working out some things with, we needed new codes for it. So there's still a little bit of work to do, but you shouldn't have any problem with any of the billing for existing services at this point. So if anyone hears of any problems, please let me know. We have some new services that we're now going to turn our attention to. How do we roll out some of the new services, such as family-to-family supports, peer-to-peer supports, supportive living, companion housing. So we're going to start having meetings and developing our proposals for how to roll those out with our provider agencies, and then also how to roll them out with self-directed folks. Most of the materials are on our website now. Some of them are still a work in progress, but either you can find them under the forms, policies, brochures, and guides, under brochures and guides, or under the initiatives for the rate methodology. We do have the new billing manual out. People want to look at that. We have the new rate tables out, and the new funding level, which were formerly called the tier package sheets, are out. That will be updated this week with new tables for youth in transition who are also receiving adult services. We'll be adding in their own funding level package for youth in transition who are also receiving adult services. We're in the process of updating that now. I think that's all I have, unless there are some questions. Thank you, Deb. Deb put the links in the chat for me.
Great. Thank you, Anne. It doesn't sound like there are any questions. I'll just pause for 1 second in case there are. Okay, we're going to move on. Heather is going to talk about a goods and services update, technology on fund update, and whole life SLA update. Heather?
Thanks, Kevin. So goods and services, I just wanted to let people know that guidelines are underway and should be coming out soon to assist everybody and provide more information in that area. We're working with Medicaid to create equitable guidelines that meet individuals' needs. One of the things that we've really been talking about is ensuring that we fulfill the needs that will reduce the requirement for Medicaid funded services. So let me say that differently. And so part of Medicaid's guidelines is that when people are using their funding for goods and services, that it's actually to meet a specific need that's outlined in somebody's ISP, and that assists the person in integrating in their community, but also reducing the need in some way for funded Medicaid services. So I just wanted to point that out. But again, there'll be more information and guidelines coming out on that stuff. I also wanted to let people know, because I know there have been questions about this and probably a little anxiety, but as far as parents and guardians as paid caregivers, CMS has given us the authority to continue paying parents as outlined in the Appendix K until we have permanent authority in our waiver. So hopefully that helps everybody and eases some anxiety, because again, I know November 11th is coming up quickly and people were concerned about that. There'll be other stuff regarding self-direction that we're working on. And so either Jackie or myself will be outreaching to certain stakeholders to have some engagement around some of the topic areas around goods and services, around just employee guidelines that we're working on, and also stuff around support brokerage. So I just wanted to let people know that's on our radar, and there'll be more information coming out about some of the work we're doing in those areas. As far as the technology fund, we're constantly working on updating to make improvements to that process. So we're streamlining it. The one thing that I want to remind people is that when you're submitting your requests, please make sure that they are filled out completely, because that is definitely the biggest thing that ends up delaying us getting information out to individuals, is that the requests aren't filled out completely. So then we need to go back and get additional information from people.
Visit www.advocatesinaction.org/DDD for a short tutorial about how to complete a technology request form.
And I also wanted to let people know that during this process, it does take time. So the 7th round just began as of September 1st. It closes November 31st. So during that time frame, we're just collecting requests and starting to go through them. So if people don't hear back right away, it's not because your request wasn't denied. It's just, again, that it's still in that period where we're going over things and we're still getting new requests in. So I wanted to let people know that as well. Additionally, there'll be a technology survey coming out in the next few weeks. We're asking that anyone who has received technology to please assist us by filling out this survey. We will be working with the social caseworkers to get that out and get replies to that. But this will help us to understand how people are using their technology, what the training needs are, and how people are accessing the internet. And it will also provide us with some additional information. So again, we really ask for your support in filling those out for the individuals who have received or are using technology. The last thing I wanted to touch upon is whole life SLA. I just wanted to let people know that some people might be familiar with enhanced SLA. As of July 1st, it switched over to what we're calling whole life SLA. Whole life SLA is now a permanent service. There are frequently asked questions that explain more about this if people are interested in it. And we will be having a technical bulletin come out on that as well. So those are my updates.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
Evan, would you like, if there's questions that arise about the topic you're talking about, do you want them now or do we want to save them? Andrew's going to facilitate that later, but do you want to hear them now or save them?
If they're specific to what Heather just talked about, we can take a couple of questions now.
So Andrew, do you see that one Michelle put in chat?
Yes, I see the question she put in chat. You want me to read it? All right. From an attendee, is DDD exploring how people who use provider services can access goods and services without having to self-direct services?
So we have tried to, let me say that question has come about previously, and individuals do have to go through an FI in order to get goods and services.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's the simple answer. It's a direct answer, and it's really the final answer. It's been explored, and no, you can't do that. You have to go through an FI. Thanks, Heather. Mary Beth?
Heather, you said that the parents and guardians will continue to be paid under the Schedule K. I just want to clarify. So you're including like November 11th to January 1st? Because that was, and
Yes,
then as of
so-
January 1st, under the renewal, that would, so there would, it would be seamless to allow the parents and guardians. We talked about a possible committee being formed to look at procedural safeguards. Has that happened? And do we have procedural safeguards? Because the only thing that I know of, I believe I know of, is that parents cannot bill for over 40 hours. I think there was that one stipulation, but other than that, I didn't know if procedural safeguards have been considered, will be considered, you know, will there be additional like documenting methods for parents and those kinds of things. Do you have any updates on procedural safeguards?
That was one of the things that I just mentioned, saying that we will be reaching out to people because
Okay.
yes, we are going to be having the committee. So I know you and I have discussed that before. You're on my list to send out. But yes, we will be starting to work on that.
A very open way of thinking on how we approach procedural safeguards for everybody. I'm not directing this at any particular person, but the two things that we want to look at for procedural safeguards are ensuring that Medicaid funds are used appropriately and that we protect people from unwittingly committing fraud. Those two things have to happen. So just have that mindset as we begin that discussion. We're not going to have the discussion today, but that's what that work group will discuss, how you accomplish those two things. John? John, you're on mute.
So I have a question about that whole issue of reaching out. How will parents get to know or learn about various groups that the department or the division are gathering to discuss these really important issues? Do you have a universal list, or are you selectively identifying people who want to be involved? And if people want to volunteer, how do they let you know?
We have been talking about how to outreach to parents, and we've been working with our partners at Ripen, our partners at Sherlock, and Jackie and I just have gotten information from some people who want to be involved. I will say we do need to move the work forward because, again, there have been questions out there for a while, and I know people who self-direct are looking for answers. So we want stakeholder feedback and engagement, definitely, but we have to make sure the group size is so that we can, again, move the work forward.
So,
Okay. My request is that I'm glad you're thinking about the other parents, because my experience, frankly, is that although Ripen and Sherlock Center and even Advocates in Action have pretty good penetration, there's still a lot of parents who don't, who are not on their mailing lists and who don't really know where to turn. And I guess that leads me to my other thought, and this is not a suggestion because I understand what a huge problem that would be. But occasionally in the old days, and I qualify as old, the old days, there would be public meetings and people would just kind of go to them because they knew there was going to be a meeting, and they would meet other people and have an opportunity to interact. In the modern days, where this Zoom stuff is being used, that ability for parents to meet each other and to interact with each other, unless they're, a select number, is lost. So I would like to ask you to think about having an occasional public meeting that all parents get notified about, either through the mail or through whatever process you have, so that occasionally people can actually see each other face to face.
Glad you brought up that point. Ripon will be talking a little bit about what they'll be doing, the services that they'll be providing through the contract that we have with them. And part of that work is some of the stuff that you just mentioned, John, is kind of getting people together. But I'll let Sue Donovan speak a little bit more to that. She'll talk about that a little later.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Great suggestion, John. Anyway, thank you for bringing that up. If that's another way to reach more people and we can get back to that, we should do that. So thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments on what Heather spoke about? Okay.
I have one just quick suggestion, and I don't know if it's works or not, but you guys produced that pretty powerful newsletter. Not to give Ann more to do, but that might be a way to just get that out there to say, hey, anybody who's interested, bother Ann. No, but to get the information, you know, because a lot of people see that and it's full of a lot of information. So it's another way to send it out.
Yeah, we'll definitely go in the newsletter. So that's just a good reminder. Thank you, Deb. Tracy Levesque is going to talk about some changes in the assessment process. So, and she'll explain why we're doing it. And we'll give any hints. I'll let Stacey take it away.
Thank you, Kevin. Alrighty, so we have some exciting opportunities here happening in the SIS unit. We are looking to enhance the assessment process overall. We will be conducting 3 different components to the assessment to help capture additional areas of support that individuals require outside of what the SIS assesses or above and beyond what the SIS assesses. At this moment, we are utilizing the SIS-A 2nd edition. The SIS team rolled that out early last month. Some folks may have already had the opportunity to go through that. In addition to the 2nd edition, we had started an additional needs and support questionnaire. And so there's an additional questionnaire happening at the time of the SIS. Once the SIS is completed, the assessor will conduct the questionnaire. That questionnaire is designed to help support additional areas, again, above and beyond the SIS, or maybe the SIS does not capture, to help get a better understanding of what the individual support needs are. Our goal is to really help target specific areas that we often see supplemental requests for, and really help reduce the reliance on these supplemental requests, or otherwise known as S109 requests. In addition to the questionnaire, we are also adding, which is just rolling out this week, what we're calling an individual meeting. That's the 3rd component to the assessment. When you have your SIS, the SIS interviewer will let you know that you have the option to have a meeting 1 week later to come back together to talk about, are there any other areas that you would like to share that may not have been shared in the initial meeting. This is not to add on to the SIS, because we cannot go back and add additional information to the SIS, but it is to add on to the overall review to help design your individual budget. And again, that meeting is optional. The SIS supervisor, Donna Standish, is an AAIDD certified trainer, and she is actively working with provider agencies, schools, Ripon, and will soon start to connect with self-directed agencies to schedule informational sessions and trainings to help identify some of the changes that I've noted today and provide a lot more detail as to what that would look like as an individual. Anything else, Kevin, that you think? Any questions?
No, could you just talk a little bit about how we're assessing getting to meeting people's financial needs?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. The 3 components that I've just shared will be reviewed by an internal committee to help ensure that the individual budget is designed to meet the needs. And so we are looking less at the letter of what the tier results in and the overall assessment. While that SIS assessment is extremely valuable, we are looking at the tier and beyond to help develop that individual budget. We want, our main focus is to get individuals the right level of supports and the right level of funding to meet their daily needs for the most optimal quality of life. Once that review is completed, a correspondence will be sent out to each individual. So much like you have your tier letter today, if there's additional supports that are required above tier, you will receive your tier notification letter, as well as if additional funding has been allocated due to the new assessment process.
Thanks, Tracy. Any questions how the new tier, how the new assessment process is going to work? Andrew?
More hours for self-direct. Do I need to redo my SIS or do I have to wait till my next SIS? I just had it last year, I think.
If you are self-directed and you're in need of additional supports, I recommend that you work with your self-directed agency to help determine if there's a way to build in the supports that you can within the new rate package. If there's supports needed above the tier package, they can help guide you through the process of a supplemental funding request.
A follow-up on that, is it, because we tell people to talk to their DD caseworkers, so should they talk to their fiscal intermediary first?
The fiscal intermediary will have the nuts and bolts to what the budget looks like.
So that's the first one to tell them, okay.
Yes, the most ideal conversation would be with the FI first, yes. You're welcome. Mary Beth?
Tracy, I didn't hear your last statement. You said you will receive a tier notification letter, and then is it a second letter or is there an additional piece to that acknowledges additional funding? Could you just repeat that sentence, please?
Sure. You will receive your traditional tier letter as it stands today. And then you will also receive an additional communication once the committee reviews all components to the new assessment process, identifying whether you have been allocated additional funds above tier to develop your individual budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome. John?
Yeah, I have a clarification that I'd just like to make. I really like how you're moving ahead with kind of personalizing people's budgets. And I particularly like the idea that we're moving towards really addressing the particular need. I guess what I don't know, and it's not, I don't think it's something that you can control at the division, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong. You know, there are people who, with some additional support than they're getting now, could probably live independently supported in their own homes, family homes, or their own apartments 24/7. You're getting very close to that budget, you know, those numbers. And I'm curious to find out, is there a state Medicaid policy that prohibits the concept of individuals living 24/7 in their own home? And if there is, I guess I'd like to know who made that decision. If there's not, is there a plan in place to help families figure out how to make that possible? I'm going to be, you know, without revealing a lot of information, I've seen these numbers, and there are people who I think with a little bit of help and a little bit of creativity could actually do that. But I'm not hearing a lot of encouragement to that yet. I'm kind of more hearing like, you know, you get to a level of need where the dollar need is high, you're kind of like shunted into a congregate living situation. I think there are people who would prefer not to be shunted in that direction, but the barrier is inadequate funding because of their location of where they're living. Can we, you know, can somebody talk about this a little bit? Who made that rule, I guess is my question.
Let me talk about that, John. when we use terms like shunted into places where people don't want to live, that's certainly not the intention of what this whole community-based DD division is about. So I don't want to talk about any individual plans here, but if we have people who could be living independently and are forced into a living situation that they don't want to be in, I would like to know about those cases and look at them independently. I doubt we're talking about hundreds of cases.
Right.
I think if there are cases where that is happening and we can figure out how to help people live where they want to live with the right kinds of supports, maybe the right kind of technology, and help that happen, we are all ears. And I am certain that the providers working with them are all ears. So I don't think that these would be cases to celebrate helping people get where they want to be across the entire system. These would be wonderful cases of collaboration. Nobody wants people to be where they don't want to be. So if you know these families and
Yep.
you can help them you could have them call me or Tracy.
Yep.
We will work on getting the right people together to help them be where they want to be. And
That's good.
be creative about doing that.
I applaud you for having that opinion and attitude. And yeah, I think I do know of some people who
Okay.
are already at that spot. So I will reach out to you
Thank you.
separately. But I also do want us to know, because I'm pretty sure that you guys are very flexible and willing to do a lot, but I want to make sure that we don't run on a fool's errand and then get kind of blocked by Medicaid, either here in the state.
We're not
or
going
at
to
the
get blocked by
federal.
Medicaid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'm
great.
going to interrupt with the administrative request for, if people type a question in the chat, the people that are answering it, we'd like to have them all answered out loud, because not everyone can read.
Yeah.
So we don't want to miss people out. So there was one in the chat. There's a couple in the chat, but one wanted to know if people after tier and additional allocation still feel that the funding does not meet their need, is it still allowable to submit an additional request S109? And the answer was yes, an individual can still submit for an S109 or administrator review. And there's another question coming up. Where's Andrew? Because he's the
I'm right
raised.
here.
Can you do the next one, please?
Yes, how far in advance of the ISP anniversary date or expected start date will people get their funding letters? And that one was from Claire Rosenbaum, by the way.
I apologize. I was kicked out of the meeting and had to just log back in. So I think I did miss that there was a question in the chat that I'd answered, if that was already mentioned.
That was taken care of. The next question, Andrew, if I could just ask you to read it again for Tracy's
Thank
sake.
you.
Yeah, it is. Question was submitted by Claire Rosenbaum and it reads, how far in advance of the ISP anniversary date or expected start date will people get their funding letters?
And do you know that answer?
If it's the annual, not related to the SIS itself, we'll be sending out statements that will have that information quarterly. Funding doesn't change in the middle of a year. It only changes with the SIS or with an S109.
Claire, does that answer your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question is
Not
if
exactly.
there's a
When it-
SIS in the middle of the year, when does the funding change? There is, Tracy, did the document ever go out? Was it ever finalized on when the SIS takes effect?
It has not been included in the newsletter yet, and to my knowledge. But
Is
we
it
do
finalized
have,
yet?
just about. It will be by the end of the week.
So for the next newsletter, we will have a document that explains when the different types of SIS, when they take effect. I'm forgetting it offhand. Tracy, do you have it with you? Could we talk about that today?
Yes, absolutely. We can share, I will share with you in one moment so I get it correct, because it gets a little tricky. It's why it's best to have it in front of you.
This is why we're putting it in writing, because we forget to.
Absolutely. If the tier increases, the effective date is the first month of the following month of the completed date.
So could you just give an
Yes.
example of what that would look like?
Yes, so if you have your CIS today,
Okay. So if it occurred
and
in September, then it starts in October. If it occurred on October 1st,
Correct.
it would start November 1st.
correct, yep. And that new increase would come along with if there needs to be an amendment to the ISP and a new PO being submitted.
So
Okay,
that's for any first-time CIS, it takes effect right away as well. The first of the month following.
first of the month,
CIS,
yep.
or a CIS with an increase.
Mhm.
There's another possibility.
Change in situation CIS occurs the day the CIS occurred, the day of the completed date.
So if you're not notified immediately, that will be retroactive to the date the CIS was completed.
If the tier decreases, the effective date is the first of the month following 90 days after the assessment. That 3-month period is given purposefully to allow for individuals to make the necessary amendments to both the ISP and the PO. That information will be in the next newsletter. Claire.
Yeah, if there's an increase, will there need to be a review of the new ISP and PO? Or is it immediately that first month, even if the PO and ISP aren't in?
To clarify, a new ISP is not needed. An amendment could be needed if there needs to be explanation of where the new funding is going. The new purchase order is needed to show where the additional funding is going.
But there doesn't need to be another ISP meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
You don't need a whole new plan because the funding changed. Just
Okay.
an amendment.
I hear where you're going with that, Claire. All parties need to be in agreement with the modifications is what you're probably thinking, right, Claire?
Well, just I'm sort of thinking from a plan writer's point of view. So if someone I'm writing a plan for has a CIS mid-plan year, do they need to have another meeting that involves the plan writer to modify everything and then submit it, which often takes weeks, and then get approved? Or does it somehow automatically happen the first of the month following their CIS?
If we feel that we need more time for the tier increase, more than what is allowed with this, we can certainly build in more time.
Well, let's just talk about what the facts are right now. If there's an increase in the CIS, this is what I'm hearing. There needs to be a new PO to identify where the funds are going, and it will take effect on the first of the month following the increase. Is that correct?
First of the month following the completed date of the assessment, yes.
Okay, first of the month following the completed date of the assessment. Not a new CIS, this is just the increase. What are you calling the assessment? I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page on this.
It would be having another CIS. So if an individual has, say, a regularly scheduled CIS in their
I'm just talking about an
CIS
increase. The CIS has already happened. We're 2 years past the CIS. There's an amendment to increase.
No, that's not what we're talking about, Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
This is when a CIS happens and the tier changes.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, tier change. All right. You take over. I got it.
So if the CIS happens and the tier changes and there's additional funding because of the tier change, that funding is available the first of the month following the completion of the CIS.
Okay.
And there's a little caveat that the completion date of the CIS is not the same as the CIS date in this case. That's explained in the write-up. So just so people are aware.
So can you just explain, Tracy, what is the completion date versus the CIS date? And now I understand what you're saying. Just so everybody's clear on that.
The CIS date is the date the actual assessment occurs.
Yeah.
The completion date is the date that it is processed and visible to us in TheraP, our electronic case management system.
So that requires the assessor, the SIS assessor, to actually, I don't think they enter the information into the system and push it forward, so to speak, so that it gets approved in the TheraP system.
Yes, and then TheraP processes it, and that's when the tier is available to us on the completed date.
Okay,
That's when you see the tier result. And our internal BHDDH team has access to that, as do the providers in TheraP. So the providers within their account, they also in TheraP see the completed date.
okay. So then we would all know what the completed date is.
Mhm.
And is there a
Yes.
timeline that workers are supposed to, from the date that the SIS is held to the date that they get that work done? Do we have a timeline when they're supposed to get that into the system?
The SIS upload is typically within the same week.
Okay.
However, if we are waiting for additional documentation and there's further review that's needed, it can take longer dependent upon the receipt of the documentation.
Okay, but if you're a SIS worker and you have all the information, you get it in within the week that you do the SIS. So if you do the SIS on Tuesday or Thursday, you still get it in by Friday.
They each
that's
have
the
an
standard.
office day that is dedicated once a week to upload their SIS.
All right, and that's important for the community to know that there are guidelines for within the unit for when they upload SISs, so that it's not arbitrary, but that they have a standard for when they do it. That's what
Yes.
I'm getting at.
And there's a few steps in there. It's not uploaded to TheraP. It's uploaded to AIDD, has to go through their process. Then we errors came back.
Yeah.
So that's why the completion date could take a few days. So that's getting the result back. People can do a new plan anytime if they feel the need to. We don't at state require that a new plan be done because there's now additional funding because of a new SIS. If someone wants to do something additional, then an amendment can be done, which is less work than a full plan. To say, I now want to do this, but the purchase order has to address the new funding, even if there are no new services or no being added.
And the amendment does not require approval, like the ISP.
I just want to we have two presenters. I know Mary Beth has a question which we're going to get to. But I want to move it along from here because I want to make sure we give time for our presenters and time for questions and answers at the end. So Mary Beth?
Thanks. Did I hear you say, so we understand the tier increase, if the tier decreases, say for instance, the SIS eval is, the tier completion date is October 1st. And then the funding would change 90 days after. And so then if somebody felt as though the tier decreased and it wasn't going to adequately address their funding and support needs, they would have time to submit an S-109 or do an administrative review. Is that why that 90-day window is given? So if the tier completion date is October 1st, they could anticipate, apply for that, and then also be looking at changing their purchase order to address a lesser funding, and then that would not go into effect until January 1st.
Yes, we understand the impact of the loss of services, excuse me, in comparison to an increase. And so trying to afford the opportunity for the increase at the earliest opportunity, and then allowing enough time, if there's a decrease, to work through some of those steps that you have identified, Mary Beth, exactly.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And please, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay. But even beyond today, if there's questions, please feel free to reach out. We can certainly be of support.
There's a question in the chat. When does the person get informed of the funding change due to a SIS? It wouldn't just be the funding change, it would be any SIS result would be sent out.
Yes, a tier letter would be generated following the CIS.
Is that sent out within a week of the CIS results, Tracy?
The tier letters typically take at least about 30 days, 15 to 30 days to be generated following the completion of the CIS.
So when does the 90-day clock start?
The completion date.
Completion date. Okay, thanks. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Sue Babin from Rhode Island Cross Disability Coalition to talk about all the positive things that's going on from her world.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody today. I think somebody might have our slide presentation. Thanks, Deb. I'm here today representing, I work for the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council, and we submitted a, well, actually the Rhode Island Cross Disability Coalition submitted a proposal to the state for a DD transformation grant in collaboration with the DD Council. Tanya Blicker, who is the chair of the Cross Disability Council, was out this afternoon over at the Pawtucket School Department doing a presentation, so she may jump in at some point. Can we go to the next slide? So we're going to talk about our project, which we call Rhode Island Wins, and there are 4 different components to it. The first is peer and family education. The second is workforce development, focusing in on staff and employers that are in the state of Rhode Island. And the third is what we're also calling employer engagement roadmap, with some work that we're doing with the Secretary of State's office. And then the last one is a collective, a learning collective involving various stakeholders who have DD grants. So let's go to the next slide. So under the first one, right here you have a picture. Some of you may know some of these fine folks. On the left is Tanya Blicker. In the middle is Deanne Gagne and Rachel Ferrara. They are the 3 coordinators who work with the Cross Disability Coalition and about 20 individuals who have disabilities. One of the things that they're doing is has put together a speakers bureau, and on the right, you see, if you can read it, it's a little hard, but it's a topical speakers bureau that's available to anybody. They're doing presentations right now this week and next week with the Providence School Department and the Pawtucket School Department. So there's presentations that they have. They're all PowerPoint presentations. They're all about an hour and a half. If anybody's interested in any of these, you can get in contact with either Tanya or myself. Person-centered planning, employment can work for you. How do you own your own business? What's that about? Building social skills and self-esteem, understanding the adult DD system. How do you transition from transition services to adult services? Let's talk about money. What does it mean to develop a budget and to save and invest money? Developing good relationships, and the last one is on sexual abuse awareness. So that's part 1 of our of the 4 areas within the transformation grant. The next one, please. Next slide. So the next slide, we've been working since last September in bringing Doug Crandall, who is a nationally known expert in the field that works with, I don't know, over 20 different states around the countries, on helping staff to really learn different techniques for going out and meeting with employers. And what the difference is to focus in on what we're calling information interviews with employers, to meet the employer at their place of business and find out about their workforce needs. And so staff are now presenting themselves as working in the field of workforce development, because as we help people with disabilities to obtain jobs in the community, we are increasing our economy within Rhode Island. And what you have on this slide is a couple of photos of 2 recent visits. Yeah. 2 different teams that went out. On the left is the team that went out to Angelo's restaurant Luigi's restaurant in Johnston. That's the team there, and that's Alan Atwood, who is the owner of Luigi's. And on the right is Rasoy, and we have Elvis in that picture. I see you on the line, Elvis. And so the teams go out and they make an interview with the employer and talk to them all about their business. They do not say, hey, I got a person with a disability who's looking for a job, but rather focus in on what does this employer need. And before they go to make the visit with the business, they have to do some research on, has the business been in the news? Does the business have a Facebook page? Have they been in PBN, in a newspaper article? What kind of posts do they have? Do they submit an annual report to the Secretary of State's office to learn everything they possibly can about that business, so that when they go out and talk with the business owner or owners, they can immediately talk to them about some things that they've seen and start off the communication and rapport on the right foot. And then they start talking to them about, so what do you do here? What kinds of things keep you up at night? If you had more money, what would you want to do within your business? What would you say are your business needs? And then the team comes back and works on a proposal for how they may address those particular needs of the business, and then determine who on the team is actually going to follow up with the employer. We have already done about 25 employer interviews since we started this project last September, and we've trained close to 70 people, I think, statewide. We were supposed to do under the contract 3 different trainings. We've already done 4, and we're going to be doing a 5th training. The next slide, please. This particular area is some work that we're doing with the Secretary of State's office. For any new business in Rhode Island, they have to register their business with the Secretary of State's office, and they have to file an annual report with the Secretary of State's office. They have a small business development unit with some tools and resources for people that are business owners. And from time to time, they sponsor webinars to educate employers about things that they should know about and resources that are going on in Rhode Island. So I approached them and I said, hey, how about if you guys, let's put together a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility series to kind of complement the work that you all are doing on educating businesses about general resources. And let's really focus in on diversity. So we started meeting back in, I think, March, a very diverse team we put together to work on this. We have created a 3-part educational series that's going to be started in the fall by the Secretary of State's office. It'll be a regular series that they post. The first part is all about demystifying diversity. What the heck does that mean anyways, diversity? The second part will be various employers in Rhode Island, and from them speaking from their own perspective on how they implemented diversity and inclusion within their place of business and how it made a difference in terms of the environment or their bottom line. The last part of the series will be on available resources, incentives, tax credits, all information that employers want to know about. We did this in collaboration also with Providence Business News, who will be releasing a really nice story on this particular piece of our DD transformation grant within the next month. The second half of this goal area was to bring recognition to the employers in our state that are hiring folks with disabilities. Many of our agencies here do give out awards to employers, but we thought it would be really cool if our staff from the community agencies could make recommendations of employers to Providence Business News, and those employers be included in their annual diversity awards, which just the process is open right now. I believe it closes October, second week of October. So we've been getting the word out to the DD community providers. Let's nominate our employers. Let's give our employers some recognition. And what Providence Business News does is they create a newsletter after they have their annual awards ceremony, and they name all of the different employers that have been nominated. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. And the other thing that's included in this is we started to create a quarterly newsletter on what's going on in the state with respect to the work that the excellent work that our providers are doing here with various employers. And I believe Ann included that in the last newsletter of the department. And the next slide. So with this, the last aspect, we thought it would be a great idea. It's a small state, and anytime there's good things going on, sometimes we don't know about it. when bad stuff happens, we all know within minutes, right? I mean, that's just the way of the world. And so there's well over 25 different agencies out there that have DD transformation grants, but yet not a lot of people know what's going on with the transformation grants. And so starting in February, I believe we had our first meeting in February, our second meeting in July, we brought everybody together that has a grant to talk about, what are you doing? And we see some overlap and we see some opportunities for collaboration. And so we have Janine Pavlak, who is the director of the New England Business Associates from Massachusetts, the facilitator of those meetings. And we've generated a newsletter on that gives updated information on what everybody's doing. And the second piece of this that's going to start next week is both Nathan Markley, who some of you guys know, awesome guy who has his own business as a podcaster, and Tina Pedersen, who has her own business as Ramp, and a strong advocate for accessibility. Both of them are going to start to feature on their podcasts some of the individuals that are working really hard on their transformation grants so that we can get the information out in a variety of different ways. So that's going to start next week, and you'll hear more about that. And I believe the next slide is just our contact information. So feel free to get in touch with either myself or Tanya. Really excited about all this stuff and appreciate the opportunity to even have a DD transformation grant to really make a difference. So I'm hoping that the focus on employers will, in opening up our knowledge and our learning different strategies for how to really develop long-term relationship with employers, will result in more jobs for folks with disabilities and better connections between our agencies and the businesses that are out there in the community.
So can you read the email addresses for the recording, please?
Sure, thank you. So Tanya's email is Tanya, TANJA @riddc.org. And mine is Suebabin, SUEBABIN @riddc.org. You can also go to the Cross Disability Coalition's website and see copies of those newsletters that I mentioned and other updated information about what we're doing with this DD transformation grant.
Thank you, Sue. That was a great presentation. Very informative. We appreciate it. Did anyone have questions for Sue before we move on?
Kevin, yeah, this is John. I'm sorry, I can't find my hand raising tool.
Okay.
So this is great. I'm just wondering if you guys could use your creativity to address another area. I don't want to add more work to you, but I think it's important. I think we need to, as a state, develop a message for families about the social and emotional and benefits of employment. Not just the paycheck, not just the hours consumed during the day, but the real opportunities for developing friendships and relationships with coworkers and valuing people's social capital contributions. I don't see a lot of that within our state. And I really hope that you guys or others that you know might say, yeah, we need to do that and use your creativity to do it. So it's not a question more than a little sermonette. Thank you.
I 100% agree with you. And when I mentioned earlier about the 20+ speakers that we have, and they each have their own PowerPoint, and some of them are on the line right now, when they go out and speak about employment and what it means to them to have a job or to own their own business, you hear exactly the points that you just mentioned, John. But I love the idea of working on something specifically that we could create and maybe host another informational meeting, either through this group or through the council or through Ripon or any of this self-direct coalition, anybody that's out there, because we do need to think of a variety of different ways to be able to reach the families. Not everybody does Zoom, not everybody reads a newsletter, not everybody goes online. So we want to try to reach people in a variety of different ways so that people get the information. That's a great idea. Thank you.
And maybe just to add to what John's saying, how do we reach people who haven't worked maybe ever, and are just afraid to work and don't really grasp that this may be the one thing that's missing in their life, that once they do it, once they try it, once they experience it, they're going to benefit in that social emotional way that John's talking about, but they're not going to know that until they get out and do it.
Or peers, and peers talk about,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I was afraid first too, or I didn't know. And look at all of the things that I'm doing now, and I'm making
Right.
more friends, and I'm going.
Yeah.
When they hear from those guys, it
Right.
really does make a difference.
And
I
we
just
can
have to
tell
put
them
a
that,
plug
but
in
go ahead.
to that some bilingual versions of that would be wonderful too, because I just remember
Yeah.
Areta talking at a recent that there was a
Yeah.
big need for that. So that would be great.
I could suggest that you take what you're doing and try to bring it into the public education world, the school systems.
We're doing that. Yep.
They need to start a lot earlier in kind of this aspirational talk about the future for kids who are in special ed, because I only hear pretty bleak stuff coming out of that world.
Yeah. Okay, Areta, I
Yeah,
think you wanted to say something?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so two things. So just to piggyback on what Dr. Souza said, exactly. So we're trying to do that, right? So boots on the ground when we do our child lesson chats, that's part of that, the employment piece, working. But even before that, you know, we have to talk to families one-to-one, not in a big group, not let's go to a meeting and they're going to talk about, you know, employment. We have to do one-to-one stuff. This is how we get people interested in working, because the other piece is the biggest piece, which is benefits counseling, because we all know it's so simple, but it's not. I'm being silly. The benefits counseling piece is very intimidating for families. And imagine if you don't speak English, but you receive SSI for your child, and that's what pays your bills, right? So one, getting them to buy in. Two, to be able to sit with them and teach them those very important skills, right? And then tying in ORS so that it's just a seamless process. But it's not, because what I'm finding when we do our child loss is that the parent will say, oh, no, they're already in ORS. Like they don't need that when they finish school. But you want them to work, you're just starting out. So there's a big gap there. There's a big, huge disconnect that we're trying to kind of figure out how to better maybe explain that whole process, but that it's seamless for families. So it's important to do that, because you are losing sight of that, Dr. Souza. And I think of the art world with my Alton. You know, he's created his own group of friends, and it's very small, and that's enough for him. But that's all that, it's all part of that, the employment piece for him, you know, the
Right.
self that he's doing. So yeah, so I think people continue to work in silos. We all know that employment is you know, employment first. I know it's important, but we want people to get there, but we need to get them there that they're coming with us, not behind us or in front of us, or they have to, but because they want to. And including that is the social piece, which is just as important, because they make such good friendships.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate the fact that a social contribution is as important as a job. You know, there are great opportunities for people to be contributors to their community that can offer a lot of these things, even if there's not a paycheck associated with it. In fact, I know of some programs, for example, in Ohio, where it's kind of the reverse, that the family makes a contribution to the community in a way that increases the social capital of their son or daughter. And it may not lead to employment, but it leads to a totally different perception and acceptance of their sons and daughters by the community.
Hey, thank you very much. That's a great conversation. And I don't want to lose time for Ripen. Sue Donovan's going to share about the new Ripen contract and how they're going to be supportive to the community.
Thank you. My name is Sue Donovan and I work at Ripen. I have a few slides and I'm going to go through them very quickly because this great conversation generated other things that I want to make sure that I include and tell you about, things that are coming down the pike, you know, some of the things that we're hoping to do in the future. So as you may have heard, Ripen, BHDDH has contracted with Ripen to provide some capacity building around self-directed supports in Rhode Island. At Ripen, the new program, we're referring to it as the Self-Directed Support Program. And we are, many of you are familiar with Ripen. We help Rhode Islanders navigate different systems of care. So healthcare, education, healthy aging, and community resources. We've been around for 32 years and we are built on the peer model, meaning that 65% of our staff are actually consumers, individuals who have navigated the systems of care that we're helping our families and consumers and individuals navigate today. So the focus area for Ripen's self-directed support program is really, these 4 cornerstones. Number 1 being the most important, training. We will be providing resources, peer support, and referrals. The trainings, we have a calendar, a full calendar of webinars and workshops that we're offering, and we will pull that, I'll pull that schedule up in a moment. Resources, they come in many different shapes, sizes, flavors, and colors, right? So resources may be a tool, it may be a fact sheet, it may be templates. Rhode Island is rich in resources, but I know before I came to Ripen, I didn't have the capacity, my family didn't have the capacity to do the legwork and find all of the resources that my child was qualified for. So I was lucky enough to get connected to Ripen, and Ripen was that bridge for me. And that's what we continue to do today. Peer support, our peer support model, it's twofold really. We're working with a couple of partners. We're working with Advocates in Action as well as the Sherlock Center. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then referrals. Our program is referring folks that are interested in self-directing, or maybe they already are self-directing or they're trying to make that decision. And we're connecting them to the resources that they're going to need to be successful in doing that. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And whoopsie. I had a little mouse incident, but I was able to get the batteries back in time. So the Sherlock Center, we're working closely with the Sherlock Center, and we've been meeting weekly and going over the resources that are available on their website and some of the supports that they have in place. We are also working with Advocates in Action. Advocates in Action is building and leadership training for peer-to-peer support, so that consumers that are doing self-direction can actually give some suggestions or share their experiences with consumers that are hopeful to self-direct or that want to self-direct. So peers come in many different ways, right? We've got peers that are consumers, and we also have peers at Ripen who may be guardians, caregivers, or parents of loved ones that are self-directing. Advocates in Action, they're good at keeping us honest, right? They are all about being person-centered and making, and their friends at Sherlock Center are actually have a formalized training right now that just kicked off a cohort this morning on person-centered planning, as well as self-determination, and helping every individual become self-determined so that they can advocate for themselves and driving their own life, driving their services. So we do have an advisory for this project, and we're working closely with the 6 fiscal intermediaries, which there are 6 different agencies in Rhode Island that do help folks self-direct by being the fiscal intermediary. And we have partner agencies that we're working with, and they'll also be on the advisory. We are looking for consumers that are self-directing, as well as caregivers or guardians that are interested. And I'll give you contact information at the end so that you know where you can reach out if it's something that you're interested in. The advisory will meet 4 times a year, and they probably have the tough job of, looking at things and giving their suggestions and input on how we can make the services and the program better. But I do want to talk a little bit more about what's coming down the pike at Ripon around community connections, which I appreciated John Souza's comments. And so I want to make sure that I have time to be able to share that as well. So our next webinar is going to be on September 26th at 6 p.m. It's a live webinar on Zoom, and we will be interviewing Crystal Cerullo, the family support specialist at Sherlock Center. And we're going to be talking about the supports that they have at Sherlock Center that folks that self-direct can tap into, and their networks, right? They're trusted allies. So there's a bulleted list here on this slide of resources that they do have. The Self-Directed Support Network, which actually there's a meeting tomorrow night, so check out their website. You might want to sign up. Family Employment Awareness Training, which so many of you have mentioned today. I was on the phone yesterday with the manager of this program at Ripon with a woman who she just wants to work. She just wants to get out of the house. She's in the house 7 days a week, and she is not living the life that she wants to live. And whether she's paid or whether it's volunteer, it doesn't matter. She knows that she needs people to improve the quality of her life. So I think that FEAT training, that family employment awareness training, that's really helpful in helping all of us raise our expectations and really also feeding that social emotional needs that we all have as human beings. So person-centered thinking training, the lunch and learns they offer, and certainly information on the work incentives and benefits planning. And I apologize for talking so fast.
Don't go away, Sue. Yeah, wait, Ariana, explain what you just did so people see this. You can register right now from that code. She just took a picture, that little box on the bottom there. If you want this information right now.
Okay, so you can use that barcode that you see in the right-hand bottom corner, and you can click on it and you can sign up for that webinar, which is next week, September 26th. So here's our lineup, the full lineup, right? So the 26th, we're interviewing the Sherlock Center. On October 10th, Ripon staff will be presenting what is self-direction. And it's really going to break it down. What is it? It's a service delivery model, but what does that mean? And what does it mean to me, right? And so it's kind of like a 101. What is self-direction? On October 24th, we have a community information session, and we're bringing in 3 different agencies that are providing or will be providing support brokerage services in the self-directed community. And so we are just thrilled. We've had such a positive response from folks. Everyone is so generous with their time, and I just want to thank everyone for that. On November 28th, we've got BHDDH's Donna Standish coming, and she does know that, all right? So no one's name appears without their permission, and she will be doing a presentation on November 28th on the supports intensity scale, right? The CIS-A, what it is and how do you prepare for it. So it'll kind of be like a fireside chat, an interview with Donna that evening. We're looking forward to that very much. On December 12th, actually, we don't have names on this, but I can share that we'll have BHDDH's Anne LeClaire and Advocates in Action's Andrew Whalen joining us to do individualized service plans. What is an ISP, right? And where do I start? On December 12th. So we'd like to thank all of our folks that are supporting these efforts. And so before I open it to questions, a couple of things I wanted to share. And there's no one good way to connect with people, right? There's no one good way. You need lots of different ways. So when we did a webinar on August 26th, and it is recorded and it's on our website. So I suggest that you check out the Ripon website around employment supports. And we had guest speakers come to talk about what different things exist. So in preparation of that, we realized that we have approximately 1,200 folks in Rhode Island that are using self-direction through BHDDH that qualify through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Out of those 1,200 folks, Ripon has a listserv where we're able to reach out to approximately 400. This is what we started with in August. And then we had a hard copy postcard mailing campaign of 800 postcards, which introduced folks to the new program at Ripon, our phone number, our email address, our ways that you could reach out to us, learn more about what's going on in self-direction, and to get connected. We're very pleased that we had very few out of 800 oversized postcards. We only got about 24 back that were incorrect addresses that we immediately, worked on correcting that so that we can reach back out to those folks. The next part of our outreach will be a calling campaign. So we will be following up with a little over 740 folks that may or may not be connected in other ways, to follow up to introduce ourselves and see how they would best like to connect, and see what needs that they may currently have that they would like to be able to share. We're hoping that we are able to, identify who's using technology and collect email addresses so that we can grow our listserv. When we send out publications on the listserv, it's not just folks that self-direct, but also many of you, right? There are direct support professionals on our list. There are plan writers, there are agencies. And so this constant contact, you may get like an email from Ripon that's a constant contact from the self-directed support. And that has a base of 2,000 recipients, okay? So it's not just consumers, but family members and friends of, and folks that are all connected through the self-directed world. And let's see, I just wanted to, so now that we've got, and maybe I should go back to, well, no, it doesn't matter. Now that we've got that schedule out, we've started talking about community connections. And once we get through our calling campaign, which we're really excited about, we'd like to establish some community connections so that we can bring folks together, so that we can get input from consumers, input from caregivers or guardians or family members, input from direct support professionals, or perhaps plan writers, or providers, folks that are supporting individuals that choose to self-direct. And those will be held in person and in hybrid and virtual. We'll have options. We'll be able to do these meetings in the community, as well as have a hybrid option, so that folks that can't travel or have difficulty traveling will be able to tap in and really make the connections that we're hoping folks can make. So that was kind of like a lot of information, and so I guess, do we have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you for a great presentation and so much information in a short amount of time. Do we have questions for Sue before we end the meeting?
So I don't have a question, but I just want to jump in because I really want to thank Ariana for showing people how you can use your technology to help you with, all things. I really appreciate that. That was such a great example. So I just really wanted to point that out. And thank you too, Sue. It was a great presentation. And thank you too to Sue Babin for also presenting all that wonderful stuff that you're doing. I mean, it's really great work.
Thanks, Heather. Questions for Sue?
Kevin, I just want to say something to Sue Babin, is that our group is following up with the business owner on our employer engagement, and we today had a meeting with him at noontime. It went very well and very positive. So We're getting there.
Thanks, Elvis.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I do.
Okay, Kathy?
So I can sign up for those online meetings.
Yes,
Maybe-
and Kath, we'll put the links when you go to our website with the recording, we'll put the links right underneath the recording. So you see them right there. And those are free, right? So Sue and Kath, there's no charge for any of that stuff. Free is nice. We like free. And
Yeah.
Kim Einloth had to leave, but she had a flyer for the Rhode Island Alliance for People for Self-Employment. Is that what it stands for? Rhode Island APSE. And they have a conference that's already on our website on the public calendar. You can see that.
Yeah.
And she wanted to mention that if you can't afford it, don't worry. When you fill out the registration, there's a thing you can say, I want a scholarship. So if anybody's interested in that, she had to leave, but she put it in the chat.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions for Sue Donovan specifically? I didn't want to shortchange Ripon and follow-up questions. I know Sue put a lot of effort into presenting today, so I wanted to make sure that we asked or gave her an opportunity to answer any questions. Her presentation was very thorough, though.
Well, thank you. But when I follow Sue Babin, I mean, talk about intimidation. You know what I mean? It's not easy, but you know.
Great team. Well, I want to thank both of our
Names,
presenters
it's
today.
the Sues.
Great job. We really appreciate being
Haywood, too.
partners, for both of your agencies, and thank you everybody for participating. I particularly appreciate the people who spoke up, gave input, asked questions, made suggestions. That's why we come together, because as a community, you can make a bigger difference when we get together and add input. Your comments and suggestions have been registered and will be taken, and of course are taken very seriously, always are. And thanks so much for getting together. We look forward to getting together next quarter. Enjoy the fall. Hope the foliage is great, and hope everybody can get out there and enjoy it. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Contact the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Phone 401-462-3421.
Para dejar un mensaje en español, 401-462-3014.
Email bhddh.askdd@bhddh.ri.gov. You can watch this recording again and find out more about the topics that were discussed at www.advocatesinaction.org/DD Community Forums. Produced by Advocates in Action Rhode Island for the Rhode Island Division of Developmental Disabilities, 2023. Remember, nothing about us without us.